Ford promised its Powershift transmission would revolutionize driving, efficient, sporty, maintenance-free. But within years, it became infamous for breakdowns, recalls, and lawsuits. How did the miracle gearbox spark claims of fraud and shatter trust in America's top automaker? This isn't just an engineering failure. The real story runs much deeper. What went so disastrously wrong? Ford's marketing machine kicked into high gear as the Powershift transmission arrived in showrooms. Brochures and commercials promised a driving experience that blended the best of both worlds: manual transmission efficiency and automatic convenience. The 2011 Fiesta and 2012 Focus featured headlines like "6-speed Powershift automatic for best-in-class fuel economy and quick response." Press releases boasted of up to 40 miles per gallon on the highway and seamless shifting usually found in high-performance European cars. Salespeople repeated the same talking points from training guides. The Powershift was filled with special transmission fluid, permanently sealed, and required no scheduled maintenance for the life of the vehicle. Owner's manuals stated, "This fluid does not require replacement during the life of the vehicle under normal conditions." The message was clear: no trips to the shop, no hidden costs, just years of worry-free driving. Ford's materials called it advanced dual-clutch technology, permanently sealed from external contamination. By every outward sign, this was a leap forward, a transmission that delivered both efficiency and performance without the hassle of traditional automatics. For buyers walking into dealerships, the promise was simple: drive more, maintain less, and enjoy the best Ford had to offer. Behind the showroom promises, Ford engineers and executives faced a set of pressures that shaped every detail of the Powershift transmission. In the late 2000s, rising fuel economy standards, known as CAFE, drove automakers to seek every possible efficiency gain. Ford set ambitious targets for its compact cars, aiming to outpace rivals and avoid costly regulatory penalties. Cost constraints were just as real. Every dollar mattered in a segment where profit margins were razor-thin. The decision to use a dry, dual-clutch design rather than the more forgiving wet-clutch systems seen in European models came down to weight, cost, and fuel economy. Dry clutches are lighter and cheaper to produce, helping Ford meet both CAFE benchmarks and internal budget goals. Supplier partnerships played a central role. Getrag, a respected transmission manufacturer, and Luque, a leader in clutch technology, signed on to deliver a system that matched Ford's specifications. While the details of those contracts remain sealed, industry practice suggests Ford dictated the architecture, with suppliers responsible for executing the vision within strict parameters. Early test drives by executives and engineers reportedly showed promise: quick shifts, impressive mileage, and a driving feel that seemed to check every box on Ford's wish list. But those early wins came with trade-offs. The dry clutch design, while efficient, left little margin for error in real-world conditions. Every decision, hardware, software, supplier selection, reflected a balancing act between regulatory demands, cost ceilings, and the competitive pressure to launch on schedule. Dry dual-clutch transmissions rely on friction to transfer power, but friction always means heat. In the Ford Powershift DCT, the clutch packs operate without the benefit of oil cooling found in wet clutch systems. Each time a driver pulls away from a stop or crawls through traffic, the clutch faces rub together, building up temperature. Laboratory and field tests show that clutch surface temperatures frequently spike above 85 degrees Celsius, well past the threshold where the friction material starts to degrade. Unlike a traditional automatic, There's no fluid bath to whisk heat away. Instead, the heat lingers, accelerating wear every time the car hesitates or shudders off the line. Over time, this repeated heat cycling causes the clutch lining to break down, leading to the gritty, vibrating sensation drivers describe as shudder. The more the transmission slips to smooth out gear changes, the hotter it gets, setting off a feedback loop that wears the clutch even faster. This cycle of heat and friction forms the heart of the Powershift's troubles, laying the groundwork for the mechanical failures and drivability complaints that followed. Inside the workshop, transmission specialists began tearing down failed Powershift units, searching for clues. At just 40,000 miles, many clutches showed heavy scoring and large amounts of debris, metal shavings, worn friction material, and even bits of the shift fork splines. Independent technicians pointed out that the dry clutch design, with no oil bath to dissipate heat, left the friction surfaces exposed to relentless wear during city driving and stop-and-go traffic. The clutch plates, intended to last the life of the vehicle under normal use, often looked scorched and unevenly worn. Even after Ford's software updates and new clutch packs, the underlying problem remained: heat buildup and mechanical fatigue. Comparing the Powershift to alternatives made the shortcomings clear. Wet clutch DCTs, like those used by Volkswagen, circulate transmission fluid around the clutch packs, carrying away heat and reducing wear. Traditional torque converter automatics, though less efficient, tolerate repeated low-speed operation without the same kind of damage. The Powershift's dry system, by contrast, offered little margin for error. Repeated repairs often failed to address root causes, with some owners returning to the shop multiple times for the same symptoms. For many technicians, the evidence was unavoidable, a fundamental mismatch between design and real-world use. The cycle of breakdown and repair became a defining pattern for the Powershift story. Court dockets and government records tell a story of mounting pressure from every direction. By 2013, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had logged thousands of formal complaints about the Powershift transmission. Entries in the NHTSA database read like warning signals. Transmission shuddered violently, lost power in traffic, dealer replaced clutch twice, no improvement. Complaint, ID 10,655,012, filed July 2014, details a Focus owner in California who reported, vehicle stalled in the middle of an intersection, nearly rear-ended, transmission replaced 3 times. Another from Texas, complaint ID 10,980,344, describes a Fiesta owner who paid $2,800 for out-of-warranty repairs after repeated failures. Each complaint carries a timestamp, a city, and a paper trail of repairs, towing receipts and mounting frustration. Regulators opened defect investigations, and class action lawsuits multiplied across the United States, Canada, and Australia. In the U.S., consolidated litigation reached a major settlement in April 2017, covering more than 1 million Fiesta and Focus owners. The settlement offered buybacks and partial reimbursements, but only for those who met strict criteria, often requiring at least 2 failed repairs within warranty. Australian courts went further, fining Ford 10 million Australian dollars for what they called unconscionable conduct, and ordering broad buybacks and warranty extensions. In Canada, national class actions forced similar remedies. Legal filings cite internal Ford documents and engineer emails, including one stating, "No drivable calibration exists for this transmission." Behind every case number lies a pattern: repeat repairs, persistent safety fears, and owners left with vehicles that many considered undrivable. The legal record is dense with technical bulletins, settlement terms, and excerpts from owner complaints, each one adding weight to the growing case against Ford's handling of the Powershift transmission. Ford's internal documents, revealed through legal discovery, contain a sentence that would haunt the company for years. No drivable calibration exists for this transmission. That phrase, written by a Ford engineer before the Powershift ever reached customers, captured the reality behind the scenes. Engineers struggled to create software that could mask the hardware's limitations, but every attempted fix ran into the same wall. There was no combination of settings that could deliver smooth, reliable shifting. These admissions surfaced in court filings and became a centerpiece for plaintiffs arguing that Ford knew about the defect long before the first recall or service campaign. Dealers received a steady stream of technical service bulletins, or TSBs, each one prescribing new software updates, clutch replacements, or transmission swaps. TSB 14-0131 addressed shudder and hesitation. TSB 16-0109 extended warranty coverage for the transmission control module. Field Service Action 14M02 promised clutch repairs for up to 7 years or 100,000 miles in the U.S., while Brazilian owners received coverage for a decade. Yet, owners often cycled through these repairs multiple times, only to see the same symptoms return. Each bulletin acknowledged unusual transmission behavior, but stopped short of calling it a design flaw. In 2016, Ford issued Recall 16S30, focused on side door latches, but overlapping with many of the same Fiesta and Focus models affected by Powershift failures. The recall notice instructed dealers to replace faulty latches, and Ford offered refunds for prior repairs. But for transmission issues, the company relied on service bulletins and extended warranties rather than a sweeping recall. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Justice launched a fraud investigation in 2019, probing whether Ford misled consumers and regulators about the severity of the Powershift's defects and the effectiveness of its remedies. Throughout, Ford maintained that its vehicles were safe and that all repairs were made in good faith. Spokespersons pointed to billions of miles driven and described the defects as isolated or fixable. Yet, the paper trail, engineer emails, warranty extensions, and the DOJ's ongoing inquiry tells a story of a problem known inside the company, managed through incremental fixes, and never fully resolved for thousands of owners. In 2017, Ford agreed to a major U.S. settlement after more than 10,000 owner complaints and multiple recalls exposed widespread failures of the Powershift DCT. Internal emails, including the phrase, "no drivable calibration," showed that engineers recognized key problems before many cars ever reached customers. Yet the full timeline of what Ford's leadership knew and when remains partly sealed in legal filings. Today, warranty extensions and regulatory fines in markets like Australia have offered some relief, but millions of affected vehicles are still on the road. The Powershift DCT story stands as a documented case where engineering shortcuts and corporate incentives collided with consumer trust. While some documents remain confidential, the public record leaves no doubt. The promises of a lifetime sealed, efficient transmission came at a far greater cost than Ford or its customers ever expected.